source for email marketing tips, especially when it comes to video email marketing. And that is all the rage this day with my current clients, which are mostly financial advisors, insurance professionals. They're getting into digital marketing right now. And Jonathan, there's this question that they keep asking me over and over again. It's just, Tom, I have this list of like 500 names, 1,000 names, and I've been sending it maybe a newsletter once a month about finance, and it gets no traction. I get nobody to click on the call to actions. I get opens, maybe an 18% open rate. Literally, how do I start getting business out of my email list? How do I get people to take action? What's your best advice on just where to start with this thing and how to move forward and really in building your email list and getting activity out of it? I think you've got some thoughts on that. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I'll say that, email marketing, particularly in the context of like having an email list and doing a newsletter, is probably one of the more boring and static areas of marketing, right? Like from one year to the next, nothing really changes. The newsletters I got in my inbox now are probably some of the newsletters that were being sent 5-10 years ago. So you definitely are going to have to commit to changing things and doing things differently. No minor tweak of the existing system is probably going to yield major results, because people not only have to make changes, but you have to make changes that are significant enough that the recipients notice that. Because here's the thing, that 18% open rate, that is not a number which is created fresh every time you send a new email out. That open rate is based off of people's past experience with your emails. So minor little tweaks and adjustments that most people don't even notice you've made probably aren't going to make a significant difference, right? You need to start changing things up in a significant way, so that when people open your email, they go, oh, shoot, well, this is different. And over time, it will take a little bit of time, but over time, if you're consistent with sending out better emails, people will start to realize that, and they'll start to open your emails more and more. So the golden rule of email marketing, right, is that you have to make sure that when you send somebody an email, they're glad they received it and glad they opened it. And if it's a video email, they got to be glad they watched the video. Like, that's the filter you should look at every single email through. Ask yourself, will the recipient be glad they received this? And what's a couple of things make this tough, right? One thing is, generally in your industry, you're more interested in your industry's topics than your clients are, right? So for financial advisor, you're generally more interested in the market information than they are. If you're in real estate, you're generally more interested in real estate tips than your audience is, right? So one thing that's difficult is you got to try to, put on the mindset of your recipient and say, do they actually care as much as I care? The other challenging part is it's not enough just to have something valuable in the email. It has to be in a format that they can realistically consume. I can't tell you how many newsletters I get where I read the subject line and I go, it sounds kind of interesting. I open it up and then unfolds in front of me paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, chart after chart, image after image, hyperlink, and I look at it and go, no. Like, maybe this will be worth my time to read, but maybe it won't. And I'm not about to risk 10 minutes of my day to figure out whether or not this is as interesting as it seems, right? So you have to put the value in there in a format people can really benefit from. So, in some cases, this might mean using less typed out text, using more visuals. Sometimes this might just mean saying less, being more concise. Or for some people, this means putting in a little 1-2 minute explainer video at the top that kind of does an overview of the topic, and then people can really dig into the meat later if they want, right? But you got to make sure, again, they're going to be glad they received it, which means there's got to be something valuable in there for them, and it's got to be delivered in a format they can actually consume and actually benefit from. So there's kind of some high-level concepts to keep in mind as you're planning it out. Now, as far as the actual content itself, I have found that there's generally 3 categories of how you can make somebody glad they received your video. The most commonly used one, and probably the one that should be used most commonly, is education, right? Take the expertise, knowledge, insights, experiences you have, bundle them up in little, snippets, little 2-minute videos or little, 2-paragraph long emails, and send them out. Answering frequently asked questions, addressing concerns you've heard coming up a lot, addressing misconceptions that you've seen in the news, right? Whatever it is, education is probably your strongest pill you want to lean on for how do you make somebody glad they opened your email. The other one, though, is entertainment, right? There are ways you can make your video fun and entertaining and interesting. Depending on the industry, some people lean more or less on this, right? Typically, most people, and your clients, financial advisors, don't lean too heavy on the entertainment side of things. Or someone who's a car salesman or a real estate agent might be a little bit more lighthearted and get to do something entertaining. But it doesn't even have to
Yeah.
be goofy and ridiculous, right? I've seen real estate agents just like do a quick little video tour of a farmer's market that's happening in the area and showcase a couple of cool craft booths. That's entertainment, right? So anything that can
Mm-hmm.
just pass the time as people, engage with this content could be considered entertaining. And the third one is like an emotional connection, right? Emotional messages. So sometimes people send emotional messages on a one-to-one basis to clients to say, hey, happy birthday, I want to let you know how much I appreciate you. Or maybe they send
Mm-hmm.
an emotion-inducing message to a referral partner of theirs to say how much they appreciate them. Or this could be a mass email send, right? So a lot of people, when this whole COVID pandemic hit, we're sending out, in my business, video emails to their networks with words of encouragement, with offers of help, with reminders of what's still good in the world, no matter how scary things seem. And it had a real emotional resonance with people. So when you're looking to create content that people be glad they received, right? I would say those are the three buckets you should look at: entertainment value, emotional value, or education value. Generally, education is what you lean on
Yeah.
most heavily, but it can be good to mix it up with a little bit of the other ones from time to time, just for a little bit of variety in there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I was partnered up with a Facebook marketing coach to do a class for financial advisors, and the whole premise of the course was you don't have to post about finance all the time. Like, the topics that get the most engagement on Facebook is, food is number one, and then you got cats and dogs and pets is number two, and then the third one is like fashion, home, decor kind of things. And then number four was DIY projects. Just people love watching videos on people taking, a motorcycle apart and then putting it back together in like a big time lapse. And that gets views, that gets people interested in it. And so the whole premise of the course was just like, hey, could you actually change up your content to be more digestible by your audience? So it's nuts. It's like, you're right. Like, I've seen, like, some of our examples in the course from our coach was like, he would interview somebody, he would work with a real estate agent on, become the best known expert in their town. Right. And one of the strategies he taught him was, you got to post about things that people like to do. And so his idea was, right, okay, let's go to a restaurant and interview the restaurant owner and then talk about the food there. And then at the back end of the video is, here's a quick market update. Should you be refining your mortgage right now? It's really simple. Like, the video is 2 minutes long, and at the back end of it is just some helpful educational tips. And, oh, by the way, go support this local business. Go support this person. Let's go. Let's like, comment, share. Let's go. And the video is like, he's got 20,000 views on Facebook, and he's got a stack of likes. So I know that he gets referred, and he's got a team of 15 people. He started 3 years ago with just himself and 2 other folks, but he's grown a massive following, and it's all because, just make it likable. Make your content like actually give back. Like, I love what you just said. It's just, hey, let's make this content so that when people open up that email, people love it. People like it. They are thankful. Like, oh, that actually gave back to my day instead of taking away the mental chips I could have been spending on something else, right?
Well, what's amazing about that strategy is when you do that, people learn to keep opening your emails, right? Like, when you have make sure they're glad they open it focus, right? A value added focus. People learn that your emails are different and unique, and that your emails make their day better, and your emails are worth the time it takes to open. So you can see that open rate go up, right? I have campaigns that I do, cold prospecting campaigns, where I scrape a list off the internet, I pull a bunch of contact information for decision makers, and I hit them with cold emails for like 8 cold emails in a row. And typically in this space, if you're doing stuff like that, you expect your open rate by the 8th email to be just nothing, right? Because people have learned to tune you out. And that doesn't happen with my campaigns, right? Generally, the first couple have a bit of a spike, right? Because I'm a new email address and I'm unfamiliar. But generally, I can keep a 40% open rate through the whole campaign, right? From 38 to 43 usually tends to be my range, even to the end of the campaign. People haven't given up on my emails and gotten bored with my emails because, again, they find them interesting and compelling, so they keep engaging.
That's awesome. 40% open rate is ridiculous. I think I've hit that maybe twice in all the email marketing that I've ever done when I just hit it with this most recent campaign. And it plays back to what you're saying. Put a title in there that people are going to enjoy to look at. Like our title was, you know, how Zen is your retirement? How Zen is your retirement? And we had a 40% open rate on that email. It was, and mind you, the question I have is like, we have the open rate so high, but if we don't have that click, that call to action, that, hey, they watched the video or they downloaded a white paper, like what would be your suggestion on like how much value you should be putting in your emails and how often should you be doing that? Should you have it just be like the video is the value, like watching this video, that's what I really want them to do? Or do you have a video? Because some people, they go crazy, right? You've seen these, they do the video and then they have more buttons after that. And it's all about get this white paper or watch our webinar. What would you say is a reasonable number of CTA in a video email or just a regular email?
Oh, I'd say just one CTA, right? You want to keep it pretty straightforward where you want to send them. I can't think of too many. Like there have been a couple of emails where there have been 2 CTAs where it was like an alternative one, right? You know, A or B, which is more valuable to you, right? There was one guy I worked with who sent out a video email talking about the real estate market in the DFW area in Texas and how the real estate market has been affected for buyers and sellers. And he did a brief little intro video that was like 30 seconds long and said, hey, if you're a buyer, click button A. It'll give you a 5-minute long video about what's going on for buyers in this market. If you're a seller, click button B. Go ahead and click that if you're a potential seller. It'll let you know, right? So like that kind of a 2-button option call to action is probably okay. But generally people's minds can't, it diffuses the, I guess, impact of your call to action when you say, hey, do this, or this, or this, or this, whichever one seems better for you. Do any of those things. You tend to not get as much as if you just direct people to one place. So one call to action is best. As far as you're talking about like value and do you put the value in the video or elsewhere? So I was working with a like an email marketing company. It's kind of like a CRM system. And the campaign we came up with was very much focused on, we called it embedded loops. So what the idea was the subject line opens up a loop in their mind. Right? It triggers a curiosity gap, right? The gap between what you know and what you want. Subject line opens that curiosity gap up. Once they open the email, the block of text kind of supports that, and it continues to highlight for them that gap between what they know and what they want to know. So there's this open loop in their mind, and they really want to close that loop, right? And the only way to close the loop is to watch the video. The video closes the loop and answers the question, gives you the needed piece of information, so you can kind of feel, you know, feel some closure there. But then, before you end the video, you open up a new loop in their mind and say, hey, that's good information, but did you know there's another layer of complexity to this? I don't have time to cover that in this video, but if that interests you, click the button below and you can learn even more. So the subject line and supporting text open in loop. The video closes one loop and then opens another loop, and they have to take that call to action. And sometimes the call to action is reply to me, sometimes the call to action is click the button below, but the only way to satisfy that or close that second loop and satisfy that second itch is to take the desired action. So that's generally what we see. You are giving some value in the video, right? You are closing one loop, you are giving some item of value, but you're opening their eyes to just how much more there is they still don't know. And then providing them an alternate path to scratch that new itch you just gave them, which again is your CTA.
That's a great piece of advice. And I get that all the time from story brand guides that I work with. I'm a certified story brand guide. And what they teach us from Donald Miller and his group is that we use the story brand framework. There's 7 notes in a story. You've got a character with a desire who has a problem, and they meet a guide that calls them to action by using a simple 3-step process so they can experience success and avoid failure. Now, any parts of those in the story brand framework we can use to, hey, we have a desire. Wait, what's next? What's the problem? Or we have a problem, and do you have a guide for this? Oh, we do. Here, click the button below. And that opens the story loop in their heads of like, I need to know how this ends. How does this really end for so-and-so? And so they've taught us to do that. And a lot of like Facebook advertising has to be creating these compelling story loops to get people sucked in and care about what we're saying. Because ultimately we've got to be telling their story rather than our story. which I think is a lot of problems with emails. Is just like, we just want to talk about the thing we want to sell, but we're not really doing a good job of saying, like, here's why you should care, right? And here's probably what you're already thinking when it comes to this topic, like real estate, like houses. Like, should I go with Redfin or should I actually use my actual real estate agent? It's a huge one right now for a lot of them. So that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Well, and that type of email you're talking about, right? Or even like, Facebook ads, right? That's a bit more of a direct approach. So the advice I gave, earlier in this conversation was about kind of ongoing email marketing to an email list. We don't necessarily have a direct agenda or a direct time frame. What I recommended there probably wouldn't work as well when you're talking about like generating Facebook leads and trying to close them, or hosting an online workshop and trying to fill leads, right? If you have more of a direct goal and a narrow timeline of what you're trying to do, such as the prospecting that I mentioned that I do earlier, right? We pull up a list of 20 sales leaders and you blast them all with email. Direct email marketing model, what I suggested earlier isn't the best. What I found is most effective when you are very direct about trying to take someone from A to B, get them a meeting and close them, is you want to create each email around a separate and very specific pain point. A lot of emailing that I see and that I did early on, it tries to capture the whole of what you're offering, right? And generally, in order to briefly capture the whole of what you're offering, you have to water down your language, right? The problem is when you're using this language that is all-encompassing of all the problems you solve and all the benefits of working with you, it tends to be very watered down and bland language, right? What I found is more effective, and what more effective people I work with is getting strangely specific, where you hone in on an individual moment in that person's day where they think to themselves, oh crap, and you have a solution to that oh crap moment, right? Or maybe a individual specific pain point, specific problem, which maybe on its own isn't huge, but it's enough to trigger their interest to make them go, huh, I never really noticed that, never really thought of that. So you want to craft, what you want to do is you want to write out very specific pain points, depending on how long your campaign is, right? I usually suggest if you're doing kind of a cold campaign, have at least 6 emails over like 6 weeks. But you can make it as long or short as you like. But you figure out what are the very specific pain points, the very individual moments in this person's day where they have a struggle that I can fix. And you create one email around each specific pain point. And this means that you are focusing all of your attention for that email on 5% of the problems you can solve for them and really ignoring the other 95% of the problems you can solve. Just focusing on one. Now, you can kind of allude to there's more. That's fine, right? You don't want people to be confused and think this is the only problem you solve. But as far as the structure of the message and what drives them, you focus on that one little problem. And then you mention there's many more that we can talk about. And generally over the course of 6 emails or 10 emails, even if people don't resonate with every single pain point you bring up, they'll resonate with some of those pain points. I work with some financial advisors too, right? So, one of the guys I was working with had a webinar he was promoting. And in his first draft promotional video, he just kind of went over the generic talking points, right? Invest for your future, protect yourself against risk, set up a legacy for yourself. True language that is truthfully all-encompassing of everything they could help with, but it's just so watered down and so bland. So I said, hey, let's just forget all that. Let's just pick one little moment. Can you think of one specific thing you've done for a client recently that helped them out? Well, yeah, we made this adjustment to 401k. We made this adjustment to how they were claiming Social Security. Great. Let's create an entire email just on that one specific example. And then in the end of your video, you can mention, now there's a dozen other scenarios that also apply, right? But for the subject line of the email, the written part of the email, the topic of the video, focus on very individual pain points, very individual topics is what tends to be most effective when you're doing a very direct campaign. Where again, you give yourself, a month or 2 months to convert someone's business is very specific. I would add to that too.
Solid advice.
I would add to that too, if you're working with an email system that gives you tracking, pay attention to who's engaging. Because when your topics are very pain point specific and somebody watches that video or clicks that link or opens that email 5 times, that's pretty much them raising their hand saying, I have that pain point. I'm concerned about that because that's the only reason for them to engage with your email, right? So again, not all systems do this, but the BombBomb platform that I've been selling for the last few years, what you'll do is you'll send the video email out to a list of 50 people, give it a couple days, you pull it up and say, okay, well, 10% of the people watch the video. Those 10% of the people are self-identifying as people who struggle with this pain point. So then you call those people, you text those people, you connect with those people on LinkedIn, you send them a personalized video email follow-up. Like you really go hardcore on those 10% of people, because they're the ones who, again, virtually raised their hand and said, yes, in fact, this pain point concerns me. And generally, if somebody can make it through 10 emails from you that are very pain point specific and not a single one resonates with them, you're probably not going to get their business anyway. So you really don't need to waste your time
Yeah.
reaching out, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what I recommend
absolutely.
for the very direct type email marketing, where you got like a specific sales
Yeah.
agenda you're trying to hit in a certain amount of time.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's a great point where you really need to pay attention to the data you're getting back. Don't just start sending out email campaigns and hope, and just like looking at, a lot of people start digital marketing and they start out with email and they do these campaigns and they get information, they get data, but they don't see that as results. They see the results as like people coming to an event, right? Or people signing up or booking a phone call on Calendly. And so when you look back at your campaigns and all the work you've done, it's really important. And you'd argue this too, is that you've got to control the data. You have to have your fingertips on it. Otherwise, what are you really building? I think, isn't that more or less the goal of like email marketing, is I'm building a database and analyzing like what pain points are the best ones, what's actually striking my audience the most, what do they like seeing my face on when it comes to a problem.
Yeah.
So
Well, if you don't watch the tracking and follow up, what you're basically doing is you're throwing your stuff out into the world, and then you're sitting back
mhm.
passively waiting for them to make the first move. And sometimes they will. If it's good
Mm,
content, they might, but you never want to be in a
mhm,
position, as a sales professional or any professional, where you're waiting on your prospect to
mhm.
make the first move. It's much better when you can make the first move when the time is right. It's just a good tracking system
Yeah,
to tell you when the time is right, so you know who to make that move with.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A good follow-up question a lot of people might have to that is like, so how should I split up my time? How, like, there's the 80-20 rule that's out there. There's the 60-40 rule that's out there. There's the rule of 72T that's out there. So when you look at email marketing, and marketing in general, is nurture, grow, reach, and then convert. Like, we've got to convert people. How much of your time should you be spending like digging into the data, or should you hire somebody to do the digging for you? Like, what's the most beneficial use of your time as a business owner when it comes to email marketing? Is it nurturing, or is it focusing on the conversions and paying attention to that more?
Hmm. I know that, in my world, it tends to go in bursts, because I typically build campaigns all at once, right? Where I'll sit down and say, okay, I'm going to knock
Mm-hmm.
out 8 emails over the next couple of days, and that's, eating up a lot of my time. And then after that, I can continue to use that campaign for months, right? So it's a bit
Mm-hmm.
sporadic. But in general, I would say that most of your time is probably going to be spent on the follow-ups and the individual outreach and that stuff. Because again, creating one email to send to a list of 1,000 people is still just one email. Now you're going to put a little more thought and care
Mm-hmm.
into it than you would if it was going to one person, but it's still just one email. So I think, if we're using 80-20 rule, right, probably 20% of your time will be spent creating a single email for your whole list. And then 80% of your time will be spent working and nurturing and following up and conversing with, individuals. But again, that can change based on the moment, right? If you're building a campaign out, then for that week, you'll probably be spending 80% of your time on the campaign and 20% on the personal stuff.
Right. Right. It just depends. Hey, you got to start. 80% of your time has to be spent on just starting this thing, doing the due diligence, getting the list. Like, yeah, I mean, what you just said is interesting too, because like you said, in collecting your emails, you kind of like scrape the database together. Like, you're going into Google and you're pulling out business owners that you think would need your services, and then collecting that and saying, okay, here's my list of, it's cold, but at least I know who they are, what they do. And that's so much different from a lot of businesses where they kind of go to a mail house or they go to a digital marketing firm. They say, buy me a list. What's it? I mean, what do you think is kind of better there? I kind of know the answer a little bit, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, a randomly scraped list, I don't expect to do very much. Not that it couldn't be successful. If your content was like bang on, then maybe you could make it work with a purchase list. But yeah, generally not, right? Generally, you
Mm-hmm.
want to, source your own leads. For myself in my role, right, we use, LinkedIn Sales Navigator to kind of, pull lists of people who kind of fit our, the personas we're going after. We use a tool called seamless.ai to get their contact information. And then that way I can be sure that what I'm sending is relevant, right? Because I mentioned your campaign is based on
Mm-hmm.
very specific pain points. But obviously you can't do
Yeah.
that if you have a giant smorgasbord of people, right? And from all walks of life,
Right.
all different occupations. So in order to
Mm-hmm.
write effective email copy, you need to have your persona narrow enough that you actually can identify what their pain points are, which generally means you need a very specialized list.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And that's what I did for many years as a marketer and IMO. Like you could go Discovery Database and get a list of every single advisor in the country based on their series license and how much AUM they have and all that stuff. And I was like, but what if we just like made a list of like the traits that make up our ideal client, build that character, right? And now when we go Google searching, and I love Sales Navigator and using that, because that is you can get really defined in your search of who you can go after and pick out, and you can find the right people. Usually you can find the right people that would listen to your message. So, but I think half the battle is like knowing your ideal client. Most people don't. A lot of people just, I don't know, I just want sales. I just want the call to action. I just want opens. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing that I see a lot of people struggling with when it comes to these email campaigns is even just the tactical execution of a good subject line and getting the video watched, right? Hands down, the most common thing that I hear from someone who's getting started with video email is, wow, how does many people watch the videos I thought they would, right? And to some extent, that's always going to be true, right? Even my campaigns, I find myself going, come on, how is my play rate as low as it is? Shouldn't it be much higher? But there's certainly a lot you can do, right? I think the latest email sequence that I made had like a 30% watch rate on it, which again is not what I would want or expect, but it's also a lot higher than most people get when they start off. So what I've found is that when you're trying to figure out why people aren't watching your videos or why they aren't opening your emails, it helps to reframe the question as, why would somebody open my email? And why would somebody watch my video? Because the truth is, they don't owe you opening your email. And if they open your email, they don't owe you watching your video, right? You got to earn those things. So in my time at doing this, I've really found that every time I've ever opened an email, it's been for one of three reasons. And from what I can tell, every time anyone ever opens one of my emails, it's for one of three reasons. First reason, the most important, is because of who sent it, right? You and I mutually know Elise Archer, right? If Elise Archer sends me an email, I'm going to open it. I don't care what her subject line is. I know her well. She has a great track record of sending amazing content, and I'm going to open it, right? Where there are some people, right, in my email inbox, and I won't mention any names, but I can picture half a dozen names in my head where the moment that email comes in and I see their name, I immediately delete it, because I've just learned from past experience that their emails aren't worth my time. And I'm no longer going to give them a chance, right? I've just had this mental shortcut built in my mind that if this email comes in from this person, it's getting deleted. So that's the number one reason people open emails, because of who sends it. There's nothing you can do in the moment to fix that, but as you're creating your campaigns and as you're building your newsletter, keep that in mind, because your open rate 6 months from now on your newsletter is going to have a lot to do with the content you're sending out today, right? So keep rule number one in mind. Who sent it is the reason they open it. The second reason people open an email, and probably the second biggest reason, is because after reading the subject line, they have reason to believe there's something valuable contained inside that email for them. Basically, everyone who goes through their email inbox, there's this silent voice in the back of their head that's asking them the question, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? And some emails clearly answer the what's in it for me question and immediately get answered. And some emails don't answer that question, or in some cases they answer it definitively toward the no, there's nothing in it for me, in which case they don't get opened. So your subject line has to answer that question, what's in it for me, from the recipient's point of view. And then the third reason people open emails is just good old-fashioned curiosity, right? Curiosity will forever be a motivator of human behavior. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, if your subject line can open up a loop in their mind and highlight a curiosity gap for them between what they know and what they want to know, a lot of times that gives them an itch, and the only way to scratch that itch is to open your email. So the best subject lines combine elements of here's what's in it for you, value, and a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of vagueness, ambiguity, enough to kind of, make people curious. But I will throw a caution there. Don't rely too heavily on just curiosity, because pure curiosity headlines have been used by lazy marketers and clickbaiters for years. And we're all kind of growing a thick skin to curiosity, right? So for example, a subject line that's pure curiosity might be, did you know, ... Sure, it triggers some curiosity, but it doesn't answer the question, what's in it for me? There's no reason to believe or not believe that email will have anything valuable in there. So pure curiosity tends to not work. Generally, my subject lines, I rely a little heavily on the pure value side of things. For example, one of the email campaigns I have is for people who have a free trial of BombBomb. That's the software I sell. And ultimately, I want to have a conversation with these people. And one of the ways I can help these people is by giving them feedback on their videos. So one of the emails I have in this campaign, the subject line is, I can give you feedback on your videos. there's not a ton of curiosity there. They know what to expect. They know what's being offered, but it's valuable, right? Or conversely, if
Hmm.
it's not valuable to them, I probably don't want to talk to them, right? If the appeal of, getting feedback on videos isn't
Right.
interesting to them, they're probably not the best person to talk to anyways. So, there's different ways to
Yeah.
craft subject lines. Obviously, the best subject lines include elements of both, where after reading the subject line, they have reason to believe the email will be worth their time, but there's still a lot of mystery as to what
Hmm.
exactly is this email? What exactly is going on? You mentioned earlier in this call, you had a subject line about, is your retirement Zen or something, right? That word Zen
Hmm.
triggered some
Yep.
curiosity, right? Of, wait a minute, what?
Hmm.
What does Zen have to do with retirement, right? And suddenly they're created a curiosity gap in their mind, right? They don't know how Zen and
Hmm.
retirement are linked, and they want to know how Zen and retirement are linked, so it triggered a high open rate. But again, if you hadn't at least put enough information for them to understand it's about your retirement, right, and just left the subject line as how Zen are you or something, I don't know, it probably wouldn't have
Yeah.
gotten right. So that subject line, how Zen is your retirement, kind of combined the elements of what's in it for me, this is going to help me with my retirement,
Hmm.
and curiosity, what? Zen? What does that mean? So
Yeah.
those are the two elements you want in a subject line, right? What's in it for me and curiosity.
Yep. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you can do that. And I think I would love to hear your opinion about the whole warning headline. Like I've seen a lot of those recently, like, do not do this until you have read XYZ. I think that plays on the whole in story brand language. It's failure. We use failure like salt. We don't want to use it like flour. And so I use those headlines sparingly, but they can be somewhat helpful to alternate what you're doing with curiosity. Because you're totally right. The curiosity stuff only works so long until it doesn't. And they're not curious anymore. So now what are you going to do? Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably stay away from that headline unless there legitimately is something that qualifies as a legitimate warning that they need to see, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing,
Hmm.
whether or not they'll open it or not open it is probably the less important question. The more important question is, after they open that email, are they going to trust you anymore? Are they going to trust your headlines anymore?
That's true.
Because if you
Hmm.
send them one of those big old warning and they open it up and realize, oh, it's just stupid bullshit marketing, this wasn't actually important, they are never going to trust
Yep.
your email subject lines again. So
Yeah.
if there's a legitimate warning, maybe, but even then I'd be careful,
Hmm.
right? Something about warning is like, because one thing I've also heard about emails, right, is that people don't make independent assessments on each single email. They work off of patterns and past experiences, right? And
Hmm.
email subject lines that start with warning, you must read this before you book. Typically those are spam emails, right? That's a pattern I've learned in the
Hmm.
past, that language like that in a subject line is usually not legit. So I would say stay away from
Hmm.
it, because I actually don't think it would get you that great an open rate. But again, the most important
Hmm.
question is, if they do open this email, will they still trust me? And if the answer is
Yeah.
yes, go for it. That means there is a legitimate warning going on. But I would say probably in most cases there's not, and you shouldn't use that subject
Think
line.
about trust. Yep. Think about trust. This is the know, like, and trust game. We've got to write content that does not have BS in it, that is educational or entertaining, and makes them feel like they are glad that they opened it up. So like we just said earlier, is, hey, that just added to my life. That's helping me out. I'm going to share this with somebody. That's the content you should be putting out there. So, well, it's been, I don't know if you've got other tips up your sleeves, but those were all excellent tips. And I really appreciate you taking the time today and giving me those tips, and especially giving our viewers those tips here, because a lot of people are having to transition to digital marketing, email marketing, and they are lost. There is not a simple guide out there. There's all these different guides, and you're trying to gather all these little tips everywhere. But I think these 3 simple tips people can take away and just go, okay, if I keep these in mind, I'm going to do good. I'll have a good open rate. And I think we also get into the habit of thinking that, this is the last email where we're going to write. I need to get this, especially during these times. Like, every email people are telling me to write, they're like ultra critical. They're getting into the details, and they're saying, like, my business is now dependent upon these 2 paragraphs and this button working. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, for sure. When
So,
you have that mindset, you tend to burn a lot of bridges, so you want to stay away from that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, I think if you're going into digital, you have to have the mindset of, like, I'm going to help as many people as possible. And it gets us out of the mindset of desperation. We're thinking, instead of desperation, there's an overflow that's coming, and all I have to do is just put my hat in the ring and help somebody out to get part of that. So, and that's the beauty of social media, and that's how it gets traction. Is just you have to continually give. It's this email marketing, social media. It's kind of like a bank account, right? I mean, we're just making these deposits over time, and usually in a bank account, you have to make more deposits until you can take out an actual withdrawal and cash in on that. So, yeah. I really appreciate your time.